Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to this video. Today I would like to give you a little recap of my recovery. So I want to talk about what phases I faced, what obstacles I faced, what I did when I wanted to return, when I wanted to go back, all these kind of things. So I talked about my whole eating disorder story in an older video, but today I'm just gonna focus on recovery. So as many of you guys know, I actually moved to New York in 2022. It was February 2022, and that was actually when my recovery journey started. Because for whatever reasons, I decided that it will be easier for me to basically start recovery in another country, far away from home, far away from people who know me, and far away from comments that may have been made. So I went to New York, I moved to New York, I arrived, and I also started recovery coaching, which was very helpful to me. Recovery coaching is very different from classical therapy, and I also have been to therapy. I recently started therapy again, so there's nothing wrong with doing therapy, and I actually advise people, especially with eating disorders, to start therapy even when you're working with a coach. But in recovery coaching, the coach concentrates way more on your habits and on changing your habits than on the underlying issues that might have led to having or developing an eating disorder, even though we also talked about those things. But my coach was actually pretty badass. I really liked her a lot, and she was like very, very nice and, you know, understanding, but she also had to kick my ass here and there and just basically tell me to eat, to stop moving, or to at least move less. We like set little goals, we like, you know, did little steps, and that was very, very helpful to me. So I stayed in New York for about 2 months before I went to California, where I stayed another month. And when I went to California was when my extreme hunger started. Back in New York, I still tried to keep the control. So even though I tried to stop calories, which with one meal a day, and I also tried to walk a little bit less, I was still very caught up in my old habits. And I would still count calories, I would still choose low calorie options, I would still walk a lot every day and focus very, very much on, you know, not eating too much and moving a lot. When I went to California, I was mentally not in a great space. I was very depressed, and so I basically didn't have the energy to get up every morning and run around the whole day, which might have saved me, to be completely honest with you. I also was lucky enough to live with a friend of my aunt who was a great person who talked to me a lot, and it was very, very helpful to also live with people I could have dinner with, because that's something I was really missing. I lived by myself for a very long time, and even before that, I actually did not have an environment where we would have all the meals together. So that was very helpful as well. But again, that was also when my extreme hunger started. When my extreme hunger first started, I was still trying to control it. So what I did was I was trying to eat quote unquote clean during the week and then binge on a Sunday, which kind of reminded me of the good old Instagram days. So if you guys have been around 2013, 2014, when the whole cheat day was a thing, it's basically the same thing, and we're not doing that anymore. I'm really not a fan of cheat days whatsoever, but that was my attempt to keep control, right? I couldn't let go of the control completely, so I would basically allow myself to eat and give in to my extreme hunger 1 day a week. And this didn't go well, of course, because then the other days I tried to make up for it, and I found myself in this old circle, which actually started everything 10 years ago again. And at a certain point I was like, what am I doing? I'm trying to escape this crap. I don't want to do this anymore. And now I'm finding myself again in this old circle. So eventually I just had to let go completely. I had to let go of the control. I had to give in. I also had to make other choices when it came to my food, because even when I quote unquote binged, which we know a binge is very different from extreme hunger, a binge is also nothing to be ashamed of, and in 99% of the cases it's actually triggered by undereating, but this is for another video. But even when I allowed myself to give in to my extreme hunger, I would use those sugar-free options that would completely mess up my stomach, and so I would wake up the next morning bloated because of some sugar-free candy, and also because of the amount of food I ate, which is kind of normal in extreme hunger, but the food options I made were definitely not healthy. So again, eventually I had to let go of all of this. At that time, I went back to Germany, I got some help, I got a therapist, And I like really tried to work myself through this because unfortunately my therapist was not the greatest. She just didn't understand eating disorders. And so I basically tried to, recover by myself. And I remember one night I was at my mom's place at the time. I couldn't sleep because I felt so guilty. I looked in the mirror. I didn't like what I see. I think I've been weighed before, even though I didn't want to be weighed. So I had seen a number on the scale and I was like in this very bad place. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I feel so gross. I don't have any energy. I'm eating and I'm bloated. I don't like what I see in the mirror. And it was actually better when I was in the depth of my eating disorder, which of course is the eating disorder's attempt to, stay around. Because as I said before, things scream when they are dying. So this is basically what my eating disorder did. I like finally let go of all the control. My eating disorder was like, wait, no, we have to go back. So I was very triggered. I was like actually really thinking about if I want to, go back to my old habits again. And I basically stayed up all night watching YouTube videos. And that was a little turning point to me because I watched YouTube videos from people who had recovered and basically make the same content I'm doing now, which is one of the reasons I'm doing those videos. So I watched videos of people who talked about extreme hunger, who talked about how horrible they felt, who talked about that things can get better, because I also had a certain timeline in my head because somebody told me, oh, it's gonna take so and so many months and then you're gonna feel great again. And it was not the case. So I was like, what am I doing wrong? Maybe I'm the unicorn that won't ever recover. Maybe I'm the one person that won't ever be happy. That was basically what I told myself. Fast forward like 2.5 years later, I'm sitting here. I can tell you guys, this is certainly not the truth. But I'm mentioning that because if you're currently in this state and if you currently feel like this, you will recover. The most important thing is to keep going. And I know that this is the hardest thing you have ever done. Trust me, I know from experience. But it was so helpful to me to watch all those videos. I watched a lot of videos about overshoot weight because back then I was very focused on my weight, my body changes. And so I was like, will my weight ever go down again? All these kind of things, which I, from a healthy perspective, would advise you to, not to concentrate on too much. But it was still helpful to me to listen to other people's stories and to, to see that everyone is kind of going through the same thing. And it doesn't make the feelings for yourself easier, but it can give you a lot of hope. So that was maybe 5-6 months into recovery. And I once read something saying after 5 months, you're good, you're not triggered anymore. It was definitely not the case for me. There might be people out there where this timeline is pretty accurate, but there might also be people out there who need 3 or 5 years, and there is no right or wrong about it. The only thing that matters is to keep going, to not go back. Because as my coach told me back at that time was, you are at a point of no return. You chose recovery. And if you really want to live a recovered life, if you really want to live a life free from your eating disorder, now is the time to keep on going. Because if you go back, you will go back and forth all the time. So this reminder of the point of no return was actually so helpful to me that I wrote it down on my hand, and I always looked at it when I was struggling. And again, it doesn't make your feelings less hurtful, but it kind of reminds you to continue doing what you're doing. Started my recovery journey in February 2022, and the situation I just mentioned was maybe in July or August 2022. So just that you have a little time frame. In September, I slowly started to work out again, which was way too early, which I noticed then. I wanted to, continue to start boxing again. I wanted to work out again. But as soon as I did that, old habit creeped in. I wanted to do more and more. I kind of started to eat less again. So I did this for some time, and then I was at a point where I was like, wait, this is actually not what I want to do. And I think this is one of the hardest things in recovery, in recovery from every kind of addiction or from every kind of habit that you want to change, because our mind is so sneaky and tricks us. And so part of me was like, well, you're doing better and you're eating more and you actually gained a lot of weight, so come on, we can just walk around all the time, which of course is not okay, because this is exactly the habit I wanted to get rid of, right? So eventually I stopped doing that again, and I had to learn to sit with the with being uncomfortable, to sit with the discomfort, because that was basically what it was. I had the worst water retentions ever. I can see if I can find some old pictures and like put them in here, but it's not beautiful. But again, we're talking about the ugly truth here. So I had the worst water retentions ever. I couldn't fit into my shoes. I was sweating all the time. I was very embarrassed. I was used to being cold all the time for 10 years, no matter how hot it was outside. And all of a sudden I felt like, you know, somebody who gained a lot of weight, who was very uncomfortable, who had a lot of water retention, still had a lot of pain in my body. And I just felt like I couldn't enjoy life. Everyone around me was like going out. It was summer, going to the lake. And I was like, I'm not going to show my body in a bikini. So I basically just had to learn to sit with my discomfort until I learned that I can do things even if I'm not doing great. I had some amazing friends in my hometown back then who always asked me to like do something, to grab ice cream, to come over, to do anything just to get me out of my mind. And I think first I had a feeling of I don't deserve this, because I was like so unhappy with myself that it felt like, you know, I didn't feel worthy of having fun or of doing something normal. But the more I did it, the better I felt actually. So I started going to concerts, I started going out with friends, I started doing things. And the more I did this, the more normal I felt again. Because recovery can be kind of this bubble where you're like in between, and it is in between, of course it is. But that doesn't mean that you can still have a life. And it's completely fair and valid to feel depressed and to not have the energy. I'm not saying you have to run a marathon, please don't. I just talked about quitting sports, so please don't. But I'm not saying you have to do all the things. But it's also fine to not be in this in-between bubble all the time and to do some quote-unquote normal things. Actually, it was essential for me. It was very, very helpful for me. And so by October, November, when it's actually a time where I was always struggling with my depression because of the weather in Germany, I was actually feeling better and better. I was going on some first dates again. I would go out again. I would start to sew again. I would start to write again. I would do all those things I had done before, but with more energy actually. And when I felt that my body finally had a little bit more energy, it was the best feeling ever. But I was also like still not feeling amazing. This was like maybe 10 months after I started recovery. I still had water retentions. I still suffered with bloating, felt very heavy. I still felt uncomfortable. My body felt like not light, or like, you know, it was not easy to move around, all those things. So I was actually doing better, but I also still didn't feel great, if that makes sense. And then in January 2023, which was nearly a year after I started recovery, I decided to visit my uncle in California, my old happy place. But as I just said, I had gone to California after I moved to New York. So my happy place also was a little bit connected with like bad memories in my head. But going to California for a couple of weeks was the best decision ever. In fact, I actually extended my stay because I didn't want to go back, and that was when I decided that I really want to move here, because that was like the plan all along. But then my recovery and my depression came in, and I really didn't know what I want in life anymore, which is also something that is very, very common. Like all of a sudden you feel like you're losing an identity and you don't know what you want anymore. But like slowly but clearly getting better, being a little bit more energetic, and then moving to, or like traveling to California in order to find out if this is the place I really want to live at, was very helpful to me, because once I made the decision, I had a clear goal. And I'm not saying you have to move to another continent, but after some times, and when you slowly start to feel better, and then when you continue to do things that are good for you, and to maybe go out with friends, or maybe try out new things, or whatever it is, it can be so helpful, because it gives you an idea of what you want in life, or maybe not just in life, but for the next time. Because sometimes it can be so overwhelming to be like, what do I want in life? Let's just look at the next couple of days or weeks. So that was very helpful. And then I went back and I knew, okay, it's just going to be a couple of months left in my hometown back in Germany. So it was kind of like this weird in between time of saying goodbye. But I was like actually doing great, because I was like, okay, I'm going to enjoy this last couple of months, and then my new life is going to start in California. And so I actually started to do more and more. I visited friends in other cities. I went out. I, again, went on dates, all those kind of things. And this doesn't mean I didn't struggle anymore. I ate and I didn't starve myself anymore. And the thoughts of going back, of starving myself, of over-exercising became less and less and less. They were still there from time to time, but I didn't give in to them anymore. And I started to live my life again. And then when I finally moved here, I was like so energized and I was like so excited that I just continued doing that. And so in the first couple of months here in LA, I also faced some obstacles. I got into like some situations that were very hard to cope with, but I noticed that I didn't use eating or over-exercising anymore as a coping mechanism, which made me feel very, very proud and also very safe, because I was like, wow, you're going through those hard situations, but you don't feel the need to starve yourself anymore. So over the time, I established a routine that works for me. I established eating habits that are great for me. As I said before, I feel like I'm eating very balanced. Of course, there are days or times where you eat more of this or more of that. And as I also mentioned in another video, I recently had a time where I kind of had a harder time to eat. So just to be like fully transparent here, I still have those times. And I still have to be very careful that I don't slip into old habits. But that doesn't mean that I'm not recovered, because basically to me recovery means I'm not doing that anymore, and I might get into some situations where it might be a little bit harder again, but I'm not giving up again and I'm not giving in again. So I hope this little recap helped you a little bit to understand my personal timeline, but I also want to point out one more time, this is just my personal timeline. This has nothing to do with you guys. Your timeline can look completely different. Maybe you need way more time. Maybe it looks different. Maybe you feel other feelings than me. Everything is valid as long as you don't give up. So thank you so much, you guys, for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.